Hello, my name is Zachary Waugh, and I will be presenting the mathematical modeling of the infected rate of COVID-19. So as you all are aware, COVID-19 has been a huge surprise and has been really devastating to the whole entire world over the past year, and has honestly had a really drastic effect on how we live and function throughout daily life on a regular basis now. So a sign of what COVID-19 is, it's a highly infectious disease that can be contracted through respiratory droplets. These droplets consist of anything that is produced from exhalation, which include breathing, speaking, coughing, sneezing, etc., as well as anything regarding touching surfaces and then proceeding to touch areas on your body, such as your mouth, nose, eyes, face, or etc. And the length of time it takes to start showing symptoms is anywhere from 2 to 14 days after initial exposure to the virus. So a timeline recap of important events that took place during this pandemic so far are December 31st, 2019, the first COVID-19 case appeared in Wuhan, China. January 21st, 2020, the first case was witnessed in the United States. February 3rd, 2020, the United States declares a public health emergency. May 28th, 2020, deaths passed the 100,000 mark. June 10th, 2020, the total cases in the United States arrived at 2 million. And then lastly, November 4th, 2020, the new daily cases in the United States arrived at 100,000. So since I'm dealing with the disease spread, I use a fundamental mathematical model, which is known as the SIR model. So this stands for S, which is a susceptible, and this is the group or population that has not yet become infected with the virus. I have I, which is infected, which is basically the people that were in the susceptible population, but have become infected with the virus. And then R, which is recovered, is anyone that was infected, but now is immune and has recovered from the virus. So they get moved straight to the recovered group. And as I was saying, so you have the susceptible population, then you have the beta times I times S, and this is basically determines the infection rate basically. So if you have a higher beta, that means the spread of the virus is going to be really fast compared to if it's a lower beta. And then you have the infected group times gamma times I, and this is basically the recovery rate. So a higher gamma, that means the faster people are going to be becoming recovered and then therefore moving to the recovered group. So nonlinear system of differential equations describing the SIR model. So you have ds of dt is equal to negative b times the susceptible population times I, which is the infected population. This is a negative because you start off with the initial population, but as people are becoming infected, this is going to be getting subtracted from. So therefore, this number is always going to be decreasing. You have di of dt, which is b times the susceptible population times the infected population minus k times the infected population. And then you have dr of dt, which is equal to k times the infected population. And parameters, you have b and k. So b is the infection rate. So if you look at di of dt, if the infection rate, so if b is a really large number, this is gonna be like basically people are gonna be becoming infected really fast, and this value is gonna be a really high number. And if you have dr dt and you have a really high k value, this is gonna mean more people are gonna be getting recovered than they are getting infected, and therefore this number will be higher. So the continuation of the SIR model. So N is the total population, as you can see on the denominator of the S of t, I of t, R of t. And the reason we use the fractional version is because it allows for more precise and accurate calculation of the numbers, and it's a whole lot easier to deal with because if you look at the bottom, if you add up S of t plus I of t plus R of t, you get a value of 1. So it makes things a lot simpler. And if you look at the right of your screen, you'll see the SIR model, the graph of it. So as I was saying on the previous slide, so you have the blue line, which is S, and this is always going to be a downward sloping because, as I said, so you have a population of 100, and then one person gets infected. That goes to 99, and then it continues as more people get infected. Then you have the red line, which is the infected group. And this is going to start off at 0, but once one person comes infected, they're going to start infecting more people, and therefore it's going to increase. And then over time, as more people become immune, it's going to level out. And then you have R, which starts at 0 because no one's been recovered yet. But once people start to become immune, that number is going to be an upward sloping line because more people are going to start becoming recovered over time. Numerical solutions to SIR model. You have S of n equals S of n minus 1 minus B of S n minus 1 times I sub n minus 1 times delta t. I sub n equals I sub n minus 1 plus B times S of n minus 1 times I sub n minus 1 minus K times I sub n minus 1 times delta t. And then you have R sub n equals R sub n minus 1 plus K times I sub n minus 1 times delta t. And the B and K are the same as they were before, so the infection rate and the recovery rate. And then you also have the delta t, which is the step size, which is basically an incrementation of the x-axis. And the numerical solution is also known as the Euler's method, which is an approximation method, which I used to get the approximation of the infected rate of the COVID-19. So real world cases stats. So I got this data from the CDC official website, and the duration that I studied was a month span from September 30th to October 30th. So new cases on September 30th were 45,342. And then on October 30th, there were 99,750. And then the cumulative cases, so from the time the virus started to September 30th, there were 258,967. And then just a month later, there were over 2,069,846 cases. And then the actual infected rate over this month span was 0.000789534. And then my approximated infected rate was 0.000138238. Okay, so looking at my data, so my initial conditions for the three groups were 0.99 for the susceptible population, 0.000789553, and then recovered 0. And then actual infected rate, which was taken from the CDC official website, is over here. And I use this data with the Euler's method in order to plot these graphs on the right-hand side. So my parameters were delta t was 1, my B, my infection rate was 0.63, and my K, my recovery rate, was 0.714. And I did two different scenarios. So I have a high infection rate, and then I have a lower infection rate on the other slide. So as you can see, since the infection rate is really high, this is why you get the overlapping in such a short amount of time, because like a lot of people are becoming infected really, really, really fast, which is something that's not realistic, because this was basically saying 63% of the population is becoming infected in a month span. So that's really not realistic at all. So therefore, that's why everything's overlapping like in just 30 days. Then you have the continuation of it with the actual infected rate. And this is what I was like looking for the most, which was the approximated infected rate versus the actual infected rate. And since it's 0.63, the percent of error was 67%, which is really, really, really large, and something that's not realistic at all, and something that you wouldn't want because this is not accurate data. And then moving on with using the same data, except this time my parameters, if you look on the right-hand side, I have a B of 0.14, which is a really small number. And then if you look at the graphs, you see everything's like straight lines. But in reality, over time, this might take months and months and months, but it will get to the overlapping like on the last slide, but it will take a longer time period, maybe like 3 months, 4 months, or even more before it starts to overlap and you can actually see it. And then a continuation of it. And this is a really important part right here. So since I use the actual infected rate of 0.14 compared to the actual infected rate of the pandemic, the yellow line, you can see that my red line, my approximated infected rate, is super close with a a small infection rate. So as you can tell, this largely relies on the infection rate. So if you have a higher number, the data is not going to be anywhere close. Whereas if you have a smaller, more realistic value, the data is going to be represented more precisely and accurately compared to the other infection rate of a larger size. So improvements to consider, I would definitely consider births and deaths, because once people are born into the population, they get moved straight to the susceptible population. And then deaths, you either become immune to the virus, or once you die, you also get sent straight to the recovered population. And this allows for more like accurate depiction and calculation of the values. Then you have herd immunity, which is the point at which a population reaches a certain immunity level, and this spreads the it slows down the spread of the virus, basically, which is something that's really important and something you're always like looking forward to doing. And then variations of the SIR model. So some variations include the Sayer model, which is just like the SIR model, but it includes another variable, which is E, and this is the exposed variable. And this is basically saying that you start off in a susceptible population, then you get exposed to someone in the I population, but once you start showing symptoms, then you move, like, okay, so basically you start off with the I, or you start off with the susceptible population, and then you get exposed to the virus, and if you don't show symptoms, then you go straight to the recovered population. But once you start showing symptoms, that's when you get moved to the I population. And then if you look on DAS of DT and DR of DT, you see things in brackets. And this is basically another group that I added, which is DV of DT, which is equal to lambda, and this is the vaccinations. So this is a group that would help out with the herd immunity, because once more people start getting vaccinated, this is going to reduce the spread of the virus and therefore reach a herd immunity level. And that's something that you really look forward to doing in a pandemic model. So just like the SIR model, you have a susceptible population, then you get exposed to an infection group, but if you don't show symptoms, then you go to recovered. But once you do start showing symptoms, that's when you move to the infected rate, or the infected population. So in summary, I explained the use of the SIR model. I created differential equations that were used alongside with the Euler's method in order to get an approximation of the real-world COVID-19 data that I obtained from the CDC website, as well as I showed the comparison of the actual infected rate versus the approximated infected rate, and how if you have a higher infection rate, the data, your approximated infected rate is not going to be anywhere close to the actual infected rate of the virus, unless the actual infected rate of the virus had a high infection rate, which in this case, for this one time span, it didn't. It had a really low infection rate. And that's why for the second iteration with the 0.14, the data was a lot closer and more accurate to the actual infected rate, because over the September 30th to October 30th, the infection rate was around the 0.14 region or area, and that's why the data was a lot more accurate and closely related to each other. So once again, my name is Zachary Waugh, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.